Welcome back, and that's after the report you just listened to. And now moving on, before we move on to our next story, I'd like us to welcome with us in the studio with me Etaba Agbo, a lawyer, of course, and a political analyst. Welcome to the studio, sir.
Thank you very much.
And congratulations on your call to Bar. I'm sure I've seen you ever since then.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, all right. I'm sure you've heard the story ongoing right now about Supreme Court Naira redesign. Of course, that's a hot cake on the political scene and the state of nation right now. What's your take on the last verdict from the Supreme Court, moving the verdict to February 22nd, I believe? What's your take on that, coming from a lawyer? I'm sure our viewers are interested.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, before I delve into this, let me first say that I'll be careful as to the fact that the matter is before the court. So
okay.
I'll be careful not to be seen conducting a public trial simultaneously with that of the Supreme Court. But
all right.
Bearing in mind what we have currently in our country, I think that we are in very interesting times as a country. In a situation where few days from now we'll be conducting an election, and then we've seen governors of a political party, the APC, dragging the federal government that is also made up of the APC before the Supreme Court on issues around a policy that emanates from that same government. So it tells us a whole lot about what the APC as a party looks like in the first place, because for me, if you ask me, I think that this revolves around them as a political party that is currently in power and of course responsible for additional policies that will govern the society. But as regards the matter before the court, I think that all Nigerians are very alert. They are alert, waiting to hear what the verdict of the Supreme Court is going to be, because for us as Nigerians, we've had, I'm not sure we can say we've had it easy going in the last couple of weeks and days, because having to wake up to the realization of the fact that you have money in your account but you can't use it is such a situation that it's not been funny at all for Nigerians. And so I think every one of us as Nigerians, we are very eager to see what the Supreme Court gets to in terms of their decision.
Okay. So, and now moving away from Supreme Court, I'd like to go to our next news, which is President Muhammadu Buhari, who ordered the Central Bank of Nigeria to recirculate the old 200 Naira notes. That was from yesterday, which will remain legal tender with the newly redesigned 200 Naira, 500 Naira, and of course the 1,000 Naira notes until April 10, 2023. The president disclosed this in the national broadcast Nigerians on Thursday, that's yesterday morning, in reaction to the escalating cash scarcity as a result of the redesigning of the 200 Naira, 500 Naira and 1,000 Naira notes and the nationwide uproar which attended the development. He assured the CBN would continue to ensure the new notes are released into the system for access as the administration continues to monitor the success of the policy to ensure Nigerians are not suffering unnecessarily. And what's your take on this? I like the fact that the Supreme Court came before the president actually made his broadcast yesterday. So now, my favorite question: do we still have respect for rule of law in this country? It's laughable, because Supreme Court has come out to say, oh, the old Naira note is still a legal tender. Then the president came out yesterday, just a day, less than 24 hours after that, the president has come out to say all old Naira notes is no longer a legal tender except the 200 Naira note. What's your take on that?
All right. Well, I think that it is important first for us to establish that in every democratic society, the rule of law is one of those fundamental principles that holds a society together. And part of, a very essential part of the rule of law is obedience to orders of the court. So we have a situation where the Supreme Court has given a ruling, an interim order to the effect that the deadline of February 10th should not be implemented until the matter before the court is heard. And of course, in the last adjourned date, the court also took time to still re-emphasize that ruling, that they should not do anything pending the determination of the suit before the Supreme Court. And then we wake up to a broadcast by the President of Nigeria addressing Nigerians on the fact that the 200 Naira notes, like the old notes, are no longer legal tender, but the 200 Naira notes, the new one will also remain in circulation alongside the old notes. For me, I think that statement by the president amounts to a breach of the rule of law. Because if the Supreme Court has given a ruling and said, do not implement this deadline until the matter before us is heard, it naturally follows that all parties before the court are expected to follow that ruling of the court and abide by the same until there is a contrary decision from the court. And so in this instance, there is a president who is the head of the executive arm of government before the court, the judiciary, that has given a ruling. And then the president has failed to follow that ruling by the Supreme Court.
But you just, sorry to cut you, you just said the president precedes the court.
No, what I said is that the president who is the head of the executive,
arm of government,
not following a ruling by the judicial arm of government.
But the executive still comes before the judicial.
Now, this is the point I want to make. The point I want to make is simply the fact that democracy thrives on separation of power and, of course, checks and balances. And so if the executive exists as an arm of government, and then there's a judiciary that also exists, and they've given a ruling, it naturally follows that all arms of government should also abide by that decision of the court. And so it will not be right for me to sit down here and begin to elevate one arm of government over the other. Of course, their powers are clearly stated out in the Constitution. If you look at Section 5, you look at Section 6, judiciary, executive, clearly spread out. And so we are now faced with a situation where there's a ruling of the Supreme Court, an interim order, and the executive arm led by the president has not followed that order. It begs the question of where is the rule of law, as you have asked. And of course, as much as some of us are much inclined to the fact that, yes, we applaud the Naira redesign, our concerns are still as the fact that in terms of implementation of this policy, how well has the government been able to implement this policy so that it does not cause unnecessary hardship to Nigerians, just like what we are seeing? I mean, it's one thing to bring out a policy which is beautiful and fantastic, and we all applaud it. And of course, bearing in mind the rationale for that policy that they want to curtail incidents of vote buying in the forthcoming election, which is a beautiful thing that each and every one of us should commend. Because we've seen in recent times or over time where politicians buy their way into offices. And so if we now have a situation where the Central Bank of Nigeria is coming up with a policy that will help us curtail some of these instances of vote buying, I mean, we should be able to applaud it. But beyond applauding it now, the concern is simply the fact that in implementing this policy, what are the strategies that have been put in place by the central bank in order to ensure that undue hardship is not caused on Nigerians? Because, I mean, we are a few days away from elections, but then look at the realities we are faced with. Protests here and there. Some days back, we saw the protests in Benin. Today, we are also told that there are protests in Port Harcourt, Ibadan, and other places. So what is it we are moving, where exactly are we moving to as a country? If few days to elections, we are having protests because of the Naira redesign. For me, I think that the issue surrounding the Naira redesign, which I applaud, and like I've said, is simply an issue of leadership. Leadership to the extent that we've not been able to see a strong move by the central bank or even the federal government to ensure that there's a wide circulation of this new Naira to all parts of the country so that individuals can have access to them. The last time I was here, I made that same point on one of your shows, and I said it is important that beyond bringing out this policy, we should be able to see an implementation strategy that does not cause unnecessary hardship on Nigerians. Up to this moment, we are hearing news of central bank coming to say, oh, they've not been able to print enough of the Nairas. In other corner, enough of the Naira. In other corners, we are hearing news such as the fact that, oh, they are alleging that banks are hoarding the new Naira note. These other parts, we are seeing POS operators, for example, charging exorbitant fees and charges for you to make withdrawal. And so is it that in Nigeria we cannot have a leadership that once upon a time they stand up and ensure that everybody who is responsible for a particular thing is held accountable? Why can't we have the central bank come out to say, okay, this is the amount we have released in circulation. Banks account for how you are able to circulate this money so that the Nigerian citizens do not suffer because of these things. And if we also have the central bank coming out to say that any POS operator, for example, who charges beyond 200 Naira, that such a person will be liable to prosecution. What are the strategies we have seen them put in place? How well have they been able to implement these things? These are the realities we are suffering. It's not as if, I mean, the policy is bad. Like I said, I mean, we applaud it. But beyond making a policy, why can't we have a strong demonstration from the government coming out to ensure that this policy is implemented in a way that it does not cause unnecessary hardship on Nigerians? I mean, the realities are just too unbearable for Nigerians. And as much as, I mean, we understand the situation, we understand why Nigerians are moved to embark on protests as we are seeing in some parts of the country. It is important that we take caution, because sometimes these things, We may not even know the political motives behind some of these things. It may just be a deliberate measure to ensure that there's chaos here and there, and then on the day of election, we hear that election is no longer going to hold. So back to the issue of the rule of law that we are talking about, it is important that the president, who is the head of the executive arm of government, gives respect to the judiciary.
Okay.
And of course, we also have our views about the matter before the Supreme Court. We have those views. But our views will not in any way influence us not to say that in the course of this matter going on before the court, orders of court should not be obeyed, or parties before the court should not in any way bind themselves to the rule of the court. No, we won't do that.
Okay.
But what we are saying is simply the fact that, yes, obey the order of the court. But then in terms of the implementation of this policy, which of course we applaud, we should see a strong leadership commitment to ensuring that Nigerians have access to this naira. What is the utilitarian value of coming to say, oh, only the 200 naira notes, the old note will remain in circulation?
Well, what's on the street, Abby, that most of the politicians, what's on the street, some persons have said that most politicians hoard money in 1,000 naira and 500 naira notes. So they feel bringing out the 200 naira note is the safe way for them not to be able to buy votes come 2023 elections. Of course, that's what's on the street, so we don't know how that comes. So before you continue, before we'll get right back and settle down into that properly. Now let's move to the elections. The United Kingdom has expressed concerns about free and fair, credible elections, and they've stated that they will not hesitate to sanction any candidates or political parties that violate the electoral process. Now, the British High Commissioner to Nigeria, Katrina Leng, while briefing newsmen earlier today in Abuja, expressed optimism that with the new electoral law supported by the UK government, the 2023 elections will be free and fair. She noted that the UK government will use its visa program and human rights sanction to punish Nigerian politicians involved in electoral violence during and after the 2023 general elections. Now, on the Naira redesign, the British High Commissioner said the UK is open to sharing its experiences as she urged that the rule of law prevail. Let's take a look at the report.
Generally, in the run-up to this election, we're tracking the data on electoral-related violence, and it is up on the previous election. I think it was almost twice the number of violent incidents. So we've all seen what's been happening, attacks on INEC stations, attacks from one party trying to prevent another party doing a rally and so on. So we are concerned. We're constantly looking out for any attempt to subvert the democratic process, which, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, is so important for Nigeria. And if it is brought to our attention, or if we're aware directly that there are people, for example, inciting violence, whipping up hate speech, or indeed actually conducting violent acts, we can and we will use our visa policy to restrict that individual's ability to enter Nigeria. We also have another tool, which is human rights sanctions. It's a slightly different set of criteria, but the conclusion and result will be the same. We have used these tools in the past. We obviously can't disclose against who for purposes of data protection. On the case of dual nationals, so dual nationals could be subject to certain kinds of ban. It would be a slightly different policy, but you will not be exempt as a dual national from the ability of our Home Office and visa people to, if we feel that you are no longer welcome in the UK because of your conduct in relation to undermining the democratic process, that is a tool we can use. And I think many of us would agree with those laudable aims. But as you say, there's different ways one can do this. In the UK, and we're very happy to share our experience with Nigeria, if rule of law it gives people confidence, whether it's a democratic challenge or a business challenge, the judges must be seen to be acting fairly and impartially. And I think there probably have been some cases in Nigeria where that hasn't always been the case, and we would like to encourage, particularly given the heightened sort of tensions around this election, because so much is at stake, that any challenges, as I said, that go through the courts, there's a big responsibility on the judges to not be put under pressure, to act impartially and to look objectively at the evidence and rule in accordance with the rule of law. Now, there has been some progress, but we all know that women in politics in Nigeria is not a good news story at all. If anything, going backwards, not forwards. I was pleased to say there's one female gubernatorial candidate in Adamawa, but that's not good enough, frankly. And I think one other area which perhaps needs a little bit more work in Nigeria's democratic journey is basically the way the political parties themselves run. down, including this point about inclusivity, ensuring they are reaching out to all segments of society to ensure their candidates represent Nigeria. So that internal democracy within the parties needs, I think, a more inclusive. That Nigeria overall should be very proud that you have stuck with democracy since 1999. This is an achievement that should not be underestimated. You look at the region you're in, with many countries having coups where presidents are refusing to step down when they reach the end of their tenure. That's not the case in Nigeria. There's never been any question that President Buhari would step down. He himself has said a credible, peaceful election is crucial to his legacy. Goodluck Jonathan handed over to him. He will hand over peacefully to his successor.
Away from that, the Allied People's Movement, that's APM, held its National Executive Committee, that's NEC meeting on Thursday, that's 16th of February 2023, on crucial national issues, particularly the upcoming presidential election. And after extensive deliberations, the party decided to adopt the presidential candidate and vice presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, that's in person of Alhaji Atiku Abubakar and Governor Ifeanyi Okowa, for the 25th February 2023 presidential election. Well, they said after evaluating the democratic credentials of Alhaji Atiku Abubakar and Governor Ifeanyi Okowa, the Allied People's Movement considers it appropriate in national interest to adopt them for president and vice president in the forthcoming election. Atiku Okowa ticket is the best and the only presidential ticket to rescue the nation that has been drifting to anarchy, they said. Nigeria needs a competent, experienced, visionary, resourceful and dynamic leader to resolve its multifarious challenges and chart a new course for the nation in next 4 years. APM has confidence in the leadership of Atiku Okowa and will collapse its structures nationwide to campaign for the presidential ticket. The party will, however, contest other elective positions, including Senate, House of Representatives, governorship, and State House of Assembly seats. Well, of course, today to analyze this with me still in the studio is our lawyer, Etawa Agbo. Is it safe to say welcome to the studio once again, because of course you've been here with me all along. Yeah. What's your take on, or let me say your general overview on this, because now it's 8 days to elections. Are we looking to seeing more of parties collapsing and going under other parties? And does it even make sense? I don't know. The Electoral Act, your party is collapsing to follow the presidential candidate of the PDP, but then the other seats are still viable. The math is not mathematics. Let me use our general language.
Well, I think that first we must recognize the fact that as Nigerians and even members of any political party,
okay,
or even as a Nigerian first, you have a right to belong to a political party, okay, and then beyond belonging to a political party, you also have a right to throw your weight behind anybody. And so even the members of the movement, as we just seen, they also have their rights to, individual rights to support whoever they feel, is within the credentials they hope to see for the leader of our country. But outside the endorsements, of course, like we've seen, we are a few days away from election. Well, it is not surprising that we are seeing all of these endorsements here and there. It's part of what characterizes a political system. We always see people throwing their weight.
Please hold on as we take this call. Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the Polity.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Please, your name and where you're calling from.
My name is Nelson.
Okay. Okay, so please make your contribution in 60 seconds.
Concerning Governor Okowa and Atiku Abubakar as becoming the president and the vice president,
okay, sir.
It's a welcoming idea, because if I want to state both the empowerment programs that they've been bragging about in the state, I've seen it that majority of the youth do not make use of their property very well. Now, in terms of that, after those things, you see, I don't belong to any party, but I'm just trying to make things clear between myself, being the president, and what they call it, Mr. Obi, and Tinubu himself.
Yeah. Bola Ahmed Tinubu, you mean?
Yes, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Now, you check this candidate. To me, my observation is, what they call it, the man of the Labour Party. The man of the Labour Party.
Mr. Obi.
Yeah. Yes, he's a much preferred candidate. So, even the town hall meetings, so at least we watch them, review them, we see what they can offer. I think we should try a better campaign, because all of them, they've tasted power before. We have seen their words. Then, nobody is innocent. None of the candidates are innocent. But at least we've seen the corrupt candidate. There is somebody who is kind of maybe a little bit okay. So I think for the presidency, Obi is the best candidate.
All right. Thank you very much for that contribution. Over to you, Etaba.
Well, I must applaud the caller for his own views. Like I said, I mean, the beauty of our democracy is the fact that everybody should have an opportunity to make choices at who becomes what in our country. And so having people turn out in their numbers to throw their weight behind different persons for presidency, I think is a welcome development. And like I always say, I think when we get to a point where even the youngest of our children are also making their opinions known on who they think our leader should be, I think that will be the hallmark of our democracy, where everybody is interested in what happens, who becomes what, and how you become what.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
All right, thank you very much. We'll go on this quick break, and when we return, the Polity continues.
Know your candidates. Imomolen Irene Christopher, Accord Party. Al-Mustafa Hamza, Action Alliance. Showore Omoyele Stephen, African Action Congress. Kachuku Dumebi, African Democratic Congress. Sani Yabaji Yusuf, Action Democratic Party. Tinubu Bola Ahmed, All Progressive Congress. Umade Peter Nana Chukode, All Progressive Grand Alliance. Oji Princess Chi Chi, Allied People Movement. Nadi Charles Osita, Action People's Party. Adenuga Sunday Oluwafemi, Boot Party. Obi Peter Gregory, Labour Party. Musa Muhammad Rabiu Kwankwaso, New Nigeria People's Party. Osakwe Felix Johnson, National Rescue Movement. Abubakar Atiku, People's Democratic Party. Abiola Latifu Kolawole, People's Redemption Party. Adebayo Adewale Ebenezer, Social Democratic Party. Ado Ibrahim Abdulmalik, Youth Progressive Party. Wanyawu Daniel Daberechuku, Zenith Labour Party. Who will emerge president of Nigeria come February 25th, 2023? Follow politics that influence your decisions come election day. Right here on Kaftan TV.
Welcome back on the Polity. If you are just joining us, trust me, you've missed a lot, but nevertheless, we move on. Information reaching us right now is that the CBN governor has ordered the shutdown of OPay and some other microfinance banks. But then we'll move away from that. We'll bring you details of that later. And now to the Coalition of United Political Parties, that's CUPP. They've released video footage of the third attack on the country home of the spokesperson Ikenga Imo Ugochinyere by unknown gunmen, and they've called on the Inspector General of the Police to immediately investigate the attack so as to unravel the mystery behind the identity of the attackers in Imo State. The third attack is coming less than a month after the second attack on 14th of January, where four persons were killed, including the uncle of the spokesman, and properties reportedly worth over 1 billion naira was destroyed. While briefing journalists in Abuja, the second spokesperson of the coalition, Mark Adebayo, accused the Imo State Governor, Opuzodinma, and the Commissioner of Police, Imo State, of the house invasion. The coalition also accused the Imo CP and the ruling party in the state of seizing voter education and campaign materials belonging to Ikenga and the PDP. Let's take a look at this report.
On the 17th February 2023, Ikenga sent out another SOS messages that his house, or what was left of his house, had again come under attack. He cried out for help and did not get help. Many would have thought that that was one attack too many, but indeed, that was what it was. It seems that there is a very desperate attempt by those after Ikenga to finish the job they have been instructed and contracted to do. You will see their faces today. And sadly, serving police officers in the Imo State Police Command, at least one officer from the Police Force Intelligence and Investigation Bureau, FIB, members of the notorious and bloodthirsty Ebubiagu network of the Imo State government, and other unidentified gunmen. We have made effort to let Nigerians see for themselves the video evidence of what we speak about. The information we have been able to obtain sadly shows that the Commissioner of Police, Imo State Command, Mr. Mohammed Ahmed Barde, knows more about the attacks on Ikenga than he is telling the world. During the attack on the 14th January 2023, people who received the SOS sent out by Ikenga reached out to the Commissioner of Police, and he assured them he had already dispatched a team to the place. Sadly, the team discharged must have missed their way because more than a month after, they are yet to arrive at his house. This recording will indeed help Nigerian security agencies in solving the mystery of the unknown government in Imo State, and I post Governor Obun Sodima for who truly he is and the kind of so-called security report he claims to be at his disposal. We also invite the National Security Advisor, Inspector General of Police, the Director General of the State Security Services, and indeed all heads of security agencies and the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security to note Idiato as a flash point. Saturday, the 11th of February 2023, 2 people were arrested conveying election materials, I repeat, election materials donated to Ikenga Igoshinyeri campaign and the PDP in Imo State. The materials include posters and other education and sensitization materials. The materials were received at the Port Harcourt International Airport, were being conveyed to Imo State. These are educational materials. Everybody does this. This is not INEC property. These are educational materials. These are, election education materials. So this is not something that somebody should go and confiscate. So now they are claiming that Ikenga has custody in his custody INEC materials. How is this an INEC material? Because they are looking for every means to frame him up. It is time to stop the madness going on in Imo State. It is time to stop the Imo State from being the killing field which has been converted into by Governor Obun Sodima and his cohorts. It is on this note that we invite election observers, both domestic and foreign, to note Idiato Federal Constituency election as a flashpoint that must be covered, as there has been promise of bloodshed by the governor of Imo State on the people of that constituency. Particularly, we invite the European Union, United States Embassy, the British High Commission, Canadian Embassy, all other accredited observer groups to ensure that they deploy to Idiato and Idiato North and South local government areas on the 25th of February 2023.
The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC in Ogun State, has signed a peace accord with political parties ahead of the coming elections in the state. The peace accord was signed with 12 political parties during the Commission's Stakeholders Forum held in Abeokuta, the state capital. Well, earlier, the State President Electoral Commissioner Olani Ijalaye appealed to all political parties in the state to educate their followers on the need to shun electoral violence in the coming polls. Ijalaye said INEC has put necessary measures in place, including training of security personnel to make sure that the coming exercise goes itch-free. He also noted that the Commission has equally sensitized community leaders to assist the INEC officials in getting votes involved in checking their exact polling units. Let's take a look at the reports.
Let me use this opportunity to commend the cooperation and support so far received from all stakeholders in the course of credible electoral process in the states. I therefore appreciate and urge you to be more cooperative, supportive, and committed to INEC for the conduct of free, fair, credible, inclusive, and acceptable 2023 general election. Special thanks to all our royal fathers for their trust in the Commission in Ogun State. It is imperative to have this kind of forum where all stakeholders will be intimated with our activities preparatory to the election, while they in turn are expected to offer useful advice and feedbacks that may enhance the value of the electoral process. Today's stakeholders meeting is unique because chairmen and secretary of political parties and their gubernatorial candidates here present are to sign peace accord on behalf of their parties and candidates. The implication of this is that every one of us here must do his and our bit to ensure that the forthcoming 2023 general election is peaceful.
Welcome back, and still analyzing issues on the state of the nation with me, still with Taba Agbo, the lawyer. Welcome. So, as regards this last case, some persons, I mean, there's been a lot of theories on this. Oh, we're talking about elections. We're talking about the politicians signing peace accord. Of course, the first peace accord caused a lot of ruckus in the political scene, where we had a particular candidate missing in action at that particular time. And now signing this peace accord, does it mean, or should we have a part where the electorate are to sign peace accord too? Because at this point in time, the main issue, the focus has shifted from even elections now to survival for Nigerians. What's your take on this?
Well, first, I think we need to acknowledge the fact that peace in every society is very important. Yeah. And of course, in times like this, when Nigerians are to go out to make a decision on who they should vote for, Ogun State also being part of it, it is important that we have this peace accord signed. But away from signing peace accords, we need to have politicians being deliberate about maintaining peace during times of election, because for a person to cause insecurity or to threaten the peace in a particular place, there's always somebody he's doing that for. And so if that is the situation, politicians need to understand that they have a serious and critical role to play in ensuring that before, during and after the election, there's peace and tranquility in the society. And so it is important, even bearing in mind the current situation we find ourselves. People are cash trapped. And so insecurity may not just be a product of who I am supporting for the election. It may also be a product of, have I been able to survive first before I'm even going out to vote? Do I even have cash to even buy or afford basic amenities that will help me survive before I even go out to vote? So with all of these things, I mean, I need not reiterate the fact that we've seen protests in different places in Nigeria. So if it continues like that, what is now going to be the situation on election day? Because I tell you, in May, if nothing is done, it may get to a point where citizens will now be standing and be shouting, oh, they can't be talking about election when we've never even seen money to buy food to eat.
Isn't that what people on the street have been saying they actually want?
No, but that's why we are praying, and we are urging Nigerians to understand the times that we are in.
Yes.
Let us not be part of the problem we are complaining of in our society. I mean, the country is hard. That is a point that, I mean, we can't even debate about that. The situation is very unbearable. And even the elites, they are also suffering it, and it's good that they are suffering it so that they too have a share of what it is like not being able to run a government that allows for equal opportunities for everybody.
Speaking of equal opportunities, do you feel the masses or the electorate right now are suffering for what they know nothing about? Because there was a report yesterday on the CBN governor on why there was a need for Naira redesign. According to him, he said the policy was implemented because news reaching them was that some politicians had ordered enough Naira. So now, politicians ordered Naira. The masses are suffering for it. Should it be the case as of now?
That's what we are saying. We are saying that they redesign. They redesign first. The rationale, if truly is committed to that rationale, the rationale for redesigning the Naira is one that is a welcome development. Because, I mean, like I said earlier on, elections over time have been influenced by vote buying, and all of these anomalies that we've seen in our election. So if we have a strong move by the CBN to ensure that they curtail the extent to which politicians go out to buy votes, it's a welcome development. But aside putting out this policy as we have seen, let them be able to create that balance. A balance where you're solving a problem and not creating a greater problem of people not even seeing money to buy anything.
Okay, let's move on to the next story and then we'll get back to the Naira redesign proper. The Inspector General of Police, Usman Alkali Baba, has tasked strategic managers of the Nigerian Police Force at the headquarters in Abuja to safeguard the public space for the elections in active synergy with other security agencies. Of course, Usman reviews the national security, overrides personnel interests, and as such, in line with the directives of President Buhari, the election shall be policed in a civil manner with full compliance with the rule of law. While the IGP also warned all officers to remain apolitical in ensuring free, fair and credible elections. Let's look at what the IGP said.
I wish to reiterate that national security interests overrides our personal considerations and desires. Accordingly, as directed by Mr. President, President Muhammad Buhari, I must therefore stress and warn that as much as we will police the election in the most civil and rule of law compliant manner, we shall also remain apolitical and leave no one in doubt of our desire to give equity to the champion, Mr. President, to ensure that election is done freely, fairly, and credibly across the nation. To ensure that our personnel and other security agencies to be employed for the election have a clear knowledge of their roles and operate within acceptable legal and ethical standards which are in line with international best practice, I have directed the distribution of the recently compiled and printed handbooks titled Revised Standard Operational Guidelines to the Rules for Police Officers and other law enforcement agents on election security.
Similarly, President Muhammadu Buhari has commissioned a wide assortment of operational assets for the Nigerian Police Force, of course acquired for improved strategic and tactical operational deployments, particularly in light of the upcoming 2023 general elections. The commissioning was held at the Police Force headquarters, that's over the week, Louis Edet House, Abuja, where one of our correspondents, Maybe Sako, has a report.
In the quest to achieve an ideal environment for safe, secured, and credible 2023 general elections, and to reassure Nigerians a democratic culture in which the police will not be apolitical and impartial, but the election results a true reflection of the free will of citizens. President Muhammad Buhari commissions a wide assortment of operational assets at the Nigerian Police Force headquarters, Abuja. The Nigerian leader added that any nation desirous of deepening her democratic credentials and advancing the cause of rule of law must prioritize the efficiency of her police institution.
The acquisition of the assets being commissioned today was in furtherance to the broad plans of adequately and appropriately equipping the Nigerian police towards guaranteeing a stable internal security order and embracing peaceful, secure, and credible 2023 general elections. My pledge to bequeath to the nation a democratic culture in which the police will not only be apolitical and impartial during the 2023 general election, but in which the process will be peaceful and secure, and the outcome truly reflective of the free will of the citizens. This vision can thus be achieved through an efficient police force, and I am delighted that the force leadership is advancing my vision in this regard.
Also, at the commissioning is the Minister of Police Affairs, Mohammed Maigari Inyadi, who stated that the equipment will guarantee a peaceful and safe election.
I'm confident that these initiatives will most importantly advance the drive of Your Excellency to guarantee peaceful, secure, and credible 2023 general elections. This is because the Inspector General of Police has confirmed that these latest assets will be deployed to complement existing fundings of force across all commands in the Federation towards strengthening capacity to deliver on the Nigerian police election security mandate. Indeed, with this focus and the ongoing operational asset procurement effort, I am confident that the Nigerian police and the lead agency in election security process have been positioned well enough to police electoral process.
The Inspector General of Police, Usman Alkali Baba, reiterates the force's commitment to deliver a free, fair, and credible election.
Your Excellency, sir, they are also procured with a view to bridging the operational gaps in the Nigerian police, position the force for the stabilization of the national security order ahead of the 2023 general election, and also guarantee the attainment of a peaceful, secure, and credible exercise in the most operationally efficient manner. In this regard, sir, I renew my assurances to Mr. President and the nation that, in line with Your Excellency's charge, the Nigeria Police will be apolitical and impartial and shall deliver on our election security mandates within the context of democratic values and best practices.
It is less than 2 weeks to the general election, and all security agencies are seen working hard to ensuring the election is peaceful and free of violence. From the nation's capital, Mavis Ako, Kaftan TV News.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, you are on the Polity, reaching you live from the nation's capital in Abuja. And we are on Week in Review, and one of the stories, and of course the important stories that happened over the week, was when DSS invited Fani Kayode. The Department of State Service informed the general public that they invited Chief Femi Fani Kayode to their national headquarters, Abuja. Of course, on 13th of February 2023, the invitation was in respect of an investigation of some of his allegations and insinuations relating to issues relevant to national security. Chief Fani Kayode faced a panel which interviewed him on the subject matter afterwards, and the service granted him administrative bail and directed that he makes routine returns to the office with effect from Wednesday, 15th February 2023 till otherwise. Well, the investigation, however, continued. Meanwhile, political parties and their media managers are advised to apply restraints in their utterances and, of course, public communication. Well, of course, after that, he came out to apologize to the general public on what he said. With me today is still Etaba Agbo, and of course, I'd like to hear his view on this very particular issue.
Well, it's a welcome development.
Okay.
If I will start on that premise, it's a welcome development. If we are preparing for an election, and then somebody who is a major stakeholder in one of the political parties gunning for the presidency comes out to make insinuations that may necessarily put people in fear,
yes.
It's only natural that the security agencies do their job and ensure that they call him for questioning.
Okay.
That is what should be done, and I mean, I commend them for taking that step, because ordinarily one would think that because he's a member of the APC,
he's immune.
Yes, the current government in power, they will necessarily want to overlook it. But I mean, it's good that he was invited for questioning, and I think it's very important that as we prepare for the election that is to come in 8 days, political parties, their media agents, privies, and anybody who has some sort of affiliations with them manage carefully the information they put out for Nigeria, because we are in a state where there are just too many issues coming up on daily basis. Today we are hearing, oh, there's a protest here for Naira redesign. Tomorrow we are hearing that there's a threat to maybe INEC office being burned somewhere. And so when we now have persons who are in a position to manage information and be able to calm the politics down, coming out to make assertions that threatens the peace and stability of the society, please, security agencies should always live up to expectations and do their job, so that, I mean, we know who is who. Because if a layman who does not have so much information at his disposal hears these things from somebody who is seemingly close to government,
The government, yeah.
it's only natural that you put them in a state of fear. So it's good that he was invited for questioning. And like I said, everybody should take caution as we prepare for the election, because the quality of information we put out there will necessarily determine what our polity is going to look like. Is it going to be heated up? Is it going to be a polity where people just go and cast their vote without any form of fear, or having this fear that, oh, they may vote and then they may not go back home safely? Let's have a polity that is devoid of any of these security threats here and there, so that, I mean, we do not have situations where first people are even scared to go out to vote, and even those who are confident enough to go out to vote, they are not even sure whether they will come back.
Okay. There is the people are scared of going out to vote, and then there is the freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Doesn't this does this correspond, or does it correlate with your human rights, like saying, oh, freedom of speech, you should have freedom to actually exercise your authority as a human, coming out to say whatever? Doesn't this does this correspond with it? Well,
the thing is that we must first establish the fact that as a human being, you have that freedom of expression, freedom of speech, to give your opinion on national issues as they come up. But there's a saying that where your freedom stops is where another person's freedom starts. And so the point is simply the fact that as much as you have a right to air your opinion on national issues, you also have a duty to ensure that the issues that you're presenting, the opinion you're giving out, is one that is well informed, and it is based on verifiable evidence. You do not come and give us informations that you yourself, you don't even believe in the credibility of that information. But I mean, because you want to bask under the euphoria of a right that you have, you just come out to spill out information without even verifying same. No. Let's have, I mean, a sane society, a polity that is very, very humane. There is no cause for alarm. People say things based on information that are verified, and not coming out to make assertions that when invited to even come and defend them, you can't even defend them.
All right, now away from that, the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board has extended the 2023 Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination registration deadline to Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023. Looks like a lot is going to be happening on February 22nd. The board, in a statement by its head of Public Affairs and Protocol, Dr. Fabian Benjamin, on Wednesday said the exercise, which was due to end on Wednesday, February 15, 2023, had been extended by 1 week. Benjamin said sale of EPINs would end on Monday, February 20th, 2023, while the UTME registration would end on Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023. The statement attributed the decision to the narrow crisis being experienced in the country. It should be noted that the board, based on its projections to 100,000 candidates per day, with this, it was possible to register all desiring candidates within the space of a few days. Now, furthermore, the board, as a responsive and proactive agency, took cognizance of the reports from across the country, indicating some difficulties being faced by many Nigerians in using their electronic channels to purchase the e-pins or obtain cash readily within the stipulated period. Now, moving on to the next story on national development. Since December 2020, more than 800 secondary students have been kidnapped, while some tertiary institutions have been attacked, with dozens of students kidnapped and some killed. Well, in this report, Mevizako gives details of how the federal government, in a bid to safeguard schools, inaugurates a National School Security and Emergency Response Center, making the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, NSCDC, the lead agency with the mandate to host the National Safe Schools Response and Coordination Center at the NSCDC headquarters. Well, the reports.
In view of the importance of education and human capital development towards overall national development, it has become expedient for the federal government to deploy extraordinary measures to tackle the spate of attacks on school facilities in Nigeria. Such efforts is the national flag-off ceremony of the National School Security and Emergency Response Center in Abuja, where the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps (NSCDC) has been mandated to be the lead agency to host the National Safe School Response and Coordination Center.
You all agree with me that the National Response Center is one of the priority components in the national plan for financing safe schools. It is also geared towards responding to emergencies across all learning locations in the country. The center will provide a consistent approach to the planning, management, and reporting of threats and attacks in schools in an organized manner. Permit me, therefore, to appreciate and acknowledge the generosity of the Commandant General, Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, for your agency's close collaboration with the government through the Technical Working Group and the Steering Committee of the Financing Safe Schools by making available the infrastructure for the Safe Schools National Response Center.
Governors also reiterate commitment to school safety.
The Nigerian Governors Forum is committed to addressing school safety, to promote quality education, and offer incentives to parents to send their children and wards to school. We would partner with ministries, departments, and agencies of government to ensure school safety programs is consummated through budgetary allocations and special interventions in the education sector in all the states.
NSCDC reiterates commitments to ensure safe schools in Nigeria.
The main ideological objective of this violent extremist group is strangely to target the elimination of Western education in Nigeria. In view of the importance of education and human capital development towards overall national development, it has become expedient for the federal government to deploy extraordinary measures to tackle the spread of attack on schools facilities in Nigeria. The NSCDC has been made the lead agency with a mandate to host the National Safe School Response and Coordination Center. Soon after the national flag-off ceremony, we shall immediately initiate the various processes leading to stakeholders workshop to validate the standard operating procedure for this project to allow for smooth operations of the National Safe Schools Program in Nigeria.
The gathering had representatives of critical stakeholders whose responsibility involves the safety and security of lives and properties of each citizenry. It is therefore hoped that a safe environment for schools across Nigeria is guaranteed. From the nation's capital, Mavis Akko, Kaftan TV News.
Welcome back to the Polity. Now we are to get into the nitty-gritty of today. That's analyzing the state of the nations. And of course, with me in the studio is still Etaba Agbo. And I'd like to start with the first story that has been circulating on Governor El Rufai, that's Governor of Kaduna State, of course, coming out with other governors to actually sue the federal government on the redesign of Naira notes. Of course, our phone lines are on for you to make your contribution. But before we get into that, I'd like to hear the contribution of our guest in the studio.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, Governor Rufai, of course, and his fellow governors of the APC, Kogi, Kaduna, El Rufai, then Zamfara, started the whole move towards ensuring that they go to the Supreme Court to stop the federal government. There's the Federation from implementing the February 10th deadline for the swap of the old notes for the new note. And we've seen emerging issues where ruling has been given. And then we have President Muhammadu Buhari coming to make a statement that, of course, does not in any way conform to the ruling of the Supreme Court. And then the Governor Rufai is now out there urging Kaduna State, the indigents, to disregard the statement by President Buhari and the position of the CBN and that they should go ahead and trade with the old notes. Well, first things first, I think one of the cardinal issues we must address in this issue is the fact of whether the statement by the president was right in the light of the ruling of the Supreme Court. And I've said here that it is wrong. It is wrong because orders of the court are meant to be obeyed. I mean, even if we have our position, like I said earlier on, as regards the suit before the Supreme Court, it still doesn't change the fact that when there's a ruling from the Supreme Court, as we have currently, all arms of government are bound to obey him. And so if the president came out to make a statement, which of course some of us have been expecting him to do long before this time, and only for us to have a situation where there's now a ruling by the Supreme Court, and then that's when the president is now taking the bold step to activate some of his powers under the CBN Act. Why didn't he do these things all the while when he had the opportunity to do them? But now, we are now faced with a situation where there's a substituting ruling of the Supreme Court, the apex court of the land for that matter, and then the president is coming to make a statement that directly contravenes that ruling. Like I said earlier, the rule of law is what is being bashed. I mean, you're just laying it on the ground and marching on it, stepping on it as if it's nothing. Ordinarily, the president should be at the forefront of leading the advocacy for the observance of rule of law.
Yeah.
But what then becomes a situation where the president of the country goes against the orders of the court. And so away from the orders of the court now, on Governor El-Rufai's position and some of the assertions we've seen them making himself and some of the governors from the APC, my point is simple. Anything that is going to ensure that we reduce the rate in which vote buying occurs in the forthcoming election, it should be done, please. And so it's a bit disturbing that at this point in time we have some members of the elite class being at the forefront of the advocacy against the redesign of the naira, and they are the ones who are now championing the cause for observance of rule of law. Even if we maintain that yes, rule of law should be maintained, but trying to interrogate their moral standing to be at the forefront of some of these things. What is really the problem with what they are, what the CBN is doing? Is it the fact that they are redesigning the naira, or is it the fact that the redesigned naira is not in proper circulation for citizens to have access to them? These are the questions these guys need to answer.
Okay.
Because, I mean, I think that at this point we should move away from whether or not they should redesign. Yes, they should redesign the naira, because that is the way, that is one of the ways in which you can curb vote buying in the forthcoming election. I mean, Nigerians have seen it all. We've had situations where people cannot even afford food to eat in the morning, but then we have persons who are stacking naira in wherever they keep those funds, and then hoping that on election day they bring them out to buy the votes of the citizen.
Okay.
I mean, if we now have this drastic measure by the CBN to curb this thing, I mean, it should be a welcome development. But then we caution, like I said earlier, that we should be able to have a situation where the CBN also ensures that in trying to solve a particular problem, they do not create more problems. And that is why I've advanced and I've advised that we should have an implementation strategy that carefully ensures that there's smooth running of daily activities without the hitch of not having access to naira.
So do you think printing more new naira notes would actually fix this right now? Because okay, let's take for instance, the CBN is trying to curb the old the people that have ordered the old naira note, of course. Now if they print more new naira notes, that means of course we've seen videos on the internet of people taking their old naira notes to CBN. CBN has laid down their rules and regulations as to how and the processes it will take for you to actually bring your old naira note and for them to give you the new naira note. Okay, now what's on the streets? I mean, people have it that most of these politicians have hoarded the money. In printing new naira notes, is that not even supporting? Because of course these same people that we are trying to curb in getting hands on the new naira notes would equally have access to it, and then they can still buy votes.
Now what I said earlier on about how the CBN should go about some of these things is the fact that we need a strong leadership that shows commitment to holding people accountable for what they are responsible for. And so how do I mean? If, for example, we have the CBN printing naira and they are putting it out in circulation for Nigerians to use, the CBN should be responsible enough to ensure that there's accountability in terms of this is the amount that is made available to banks. Let them have a system that checks all of these things. They have access to how much is being doled out on a daily basis. If possible, they should even have reasonable limits. Thresholds that if you go beyond it, you should be able to give reasons why you are coming to deposit money beyond this amount. And why you are requesting for money beyond this amount. These are some of the things we need to see happening in Nigeria. But I mean, we are where we are. Those who have stacked their naira hoping that the election will come so that they will dole it out and buy votes, they are crying. Of course, we are happy they are crying. Because part of why we are suffering in this country is that the greed that some of our politicians have is such that they do not care whether people have food or not. All they care about is to keep their, to stockpile naira somewhere. And then on election day, they will just surface with it and then begin to wow the citizens with these funds without necessarily paying attention to the level of hardship they have caused for the citizens long before this time. So the point is simply the fact that yes, Governor El-Rufai and others, they should focus more on saying, oh CBN, please can we have more of the new naira in circulation, rather than trying to fight the redesigning.
And even if they say they
policy.
need the new naira in circulation, what do they need it for?
That is it. So that's why we are saying that there should be a system of accountability. So even when you come to withdraw this money, you should be able to say, give reasons why you are withdrawing
so much
above a particular threshold that has been set, for example.
Okay.
I'm just giving instances. So if you have these things in place, I mean, we'll be able to run a system that there's naira in circulation, and the CBN is also able to control the amount that is in circulation in line with its mandate to ensure there is monetary stability in Nigeria.
Okay.
So, I mean, while we hope and we pray that the outcome of the decision before the matter before the Supreme Court reflects the ideas and what the Nigerian people want, which of course will necessarily boil down to the fact that they want an election that is not influenced by money. Well, we hope that comes out.
Okay. Do you think that is actually achievable in Nigeria of today? I mean, I'm totally against vote buying.
Yes.
I'm all for, we need a new and a perfect government. Well, we can't have a perfect government, but near perfect government right now. Do you think it's achievable in Nigeria to actually have an election where people do not buy votes or sell their votes generally?
Well, the thing is that with the current realities in Nigeria, it will be very difficult for you to say that you will have a system that, or an election that is totally devoid of vote buying. But I think if we are deliberate about putting out measures that will reduce the extent to which vote buying is carried out in Nigeria, I think it will be a step towards the right direction.
Okay.
Let's not just leave a system that, I mean, it encourages it in full force. Even if it may exist, because of the level of hardship we are facing, let us be able to reduce the extent to which these things ultimately decide who leads our country.
Who leads our country?
So it should not just be that we are not making any effort to reduce it. We may not be able to, I mean, get to the point where we say, oh, our system is totally free of these things. But let it be seen that we are taking steps, deliberate measures towards curbing some of these things. And that is why the CBN redesigning policy is a welcome development. But we are also saying, please, let's have an accommodating environment where, while we are solving the problem of vote buying, we do not create a bigger problem where individuals do not even have access to naira at all.
Okay, speaking on having access to naira, how do you think this is going to affect the general elections? Because now, as of today, it's 8 days to elections, and some states are in chaos right now. We've seen Port Harcourt, we've seen Warri, we've seen Oyo State, we've seen Ondo State. I mean, that's like 5 out of 36 states, and even other states that are mellowing down. It's not as if it's easier for them. How do you think this is going to affect this general elections? Is it going to be on the positive or the negative side? And then, what do you think? I'd like us to just think the Supreme Court would actually say about this. And is there still going to be a recourse of no respect for the rule of law for them?
Well, first things first, like you said, how the whole situation is going to affect the election that is in 8 days to come. The current reality we have is such that individuals are already reacting. Citizens are already reacting. We've seen the situation in Benin. Banks are being burnt down on a daily basis, which is something that we do not in any way applaud. But then if we are 8 days away from election and we are seeing some of these things, the question is, what will it be like on the day of election? And even if these things keep reoccurring, is it possible for us to have an election in a system where there's widespread protests, banks are being vandalized? It's not possible. It's only when we have a secured environment that, I mean, we can have election. And like I always say, as much as we understand the level of hardship that is currently being faced by Nigerians because of the policy we've seen, we need to be careful. We need to be careful so that we are not ambassadors of the problem that will make the election not to hold. That is just our concern too, because, I mean, there's a way these concerns will go, these protests here and there, vandalizing public properties will go. The government may now have a reason to sit down and say, oh, we can't have election on this day because of this one. We shouldn't be the reason why, I mean, any misfortune will happen to the election. That's why we are emphasizing that if the government will be serious about curbing some, handling these issues, they should take drastic measures to ensure that in every way possible, they meet the yearnings of the citizens and ensure that there is cash in circulation, while also being careful not to allow politicians to carry this yes, and then cause the problem of
course, that is quite important.
And I think the other question you asked is the issue of preempting the decision of the Supreme Court. Please, like I said earlier on, we are careful. We are careful, knowing fully well that, I mean, the matter is already before the court, and so that we do not in any way conduct a public trial simultaneously with what is before the Supreme Court. We allow the court to, of course, give his own judgment in the interest of justice. But we are hopeful that, of course, taking cognizance of the relevant laws in our society that enables the CBN to act, and the role the president plays in ensuring that they come in certain instances to give certain directions to the CBN. I mean, the Supreme Court will be well guided on all of these laws, and of course, we are hopeful, very much hopeful, that in the interest of justice, they will reflect the earnings of Nigerian people.
All right, thank you so much. I'm sure our viewers at home enjoyed you, because even right in the studio, you had very nice things to say, and thank you so much for joining us on the program. We hope to see you once again some other time, probably of course that will be probably after elections.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you viewers at home for staying with us all through the week on the Polity, and this is where we bring an end to the Polity and of course the week in review for today. Thank you so much for watching, and of course, like our guest has said, make sure you are not used as a tool for the government to, of course, cancel the next election. Make sure you at least try to stay sane. Of course, we know there's cash scarcity right now, but we are begging and imploring that everybody stay safe and do what is right by us to ensure that the election actually happens. Thank you. This is where we bring to end the Polity for this week, and thank you to our cast and crew, of course. My name is Messi Dabajide. See you next week. Bye.